here's where we are today. We're talking about the SWOT analysis, and that's going to be a really key part of this project because it's going to bring together all of the bits and pieces around it. Okay, so the learning goal there, I am able to build a SWOT analysis that helps me identify business issues and make recommendations. And you get better at this with practice, right? This is something that the 12s are clearly better than the Year 11s at, just because they've had that extra practice. So let's have a look at it. Okay, let's have a look at it for Uber, and just let me put a couple in so you can see. Starting with the basics, so SWOT is all about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And the strengths and weaknesses, they're the things inside the business. They're the internal factors. They're the things that the business has. Opportunities and threats, they are the elements that are outside in the environment. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these things in general terms. Right, so these things could be strengths and weaknesses. I think that's the second time I spelled that wrong. They can be things like the quality of your brand. It can be about the people, the processes that you've got. Okay, it could be about lower cost production if you've got that. It might be around the marketing mix. They're all things that you've got. Price of inputs. They're things that you might have that are either good or bad. For example, you might have to pay a whole lot more. I just heard on the radio on the way in today talking about farmers. And so farmers in Australia, according to the member for Parliament Katter, who looks after the big seat, I think the seat of Kennedy up in North Queensland, he was saying that on average, Australian farmers get 4% of their income from the government, but in developing countries, the average is close to 30%. Because they have things like tariffs that make inputs more expensive, so that makes their own cheaper. They might get subsidies for different things. So in that case, that's a real weakness for our farmers, is that the cost of production becomes higher. Opportunities and threats. These ones are the external things. And they might be things like the environment, the economy, government, regulation, and competitors. They're really important, and they're a good checklist, right? If you guys look at those things and say, yeah, I've got them, or yeah, I don't have them, they're a nice little checklist for you for your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, threats. In this case, though, often it's like a number of bullet points. In this case, I expect that you want to be developing these a little bit further. Okay, so if I make this for Uber, okay, what might I'll just put it down the bottom. Right. A strength for Uber that I've already looked at in my analysis. Okay, they have a well-recognised brand. Okay, which makes it hard for competitors to compete. So a very well recognised brand. What's a weakness for Uber? Well, one of the weaknesses is that they don't have the full licensing from governments that a taxi might have. Okay, that's the real problem. They don't have that set in place. What's an opportunity? One of the opportunities I said is that they are ride-sharing app, and this could easily transfer of other services, for example, houses or cars, where people could, for example, if I went away on holidays for 3 weeks, no one used my car for that time, right? What a waste of a car. Maybe Uber can come up with an app where Verushka might have been looking for a car for those 3 weeks because she was on holidays, and she may have paid me $100 a week to rent my car, about a third of the price of a normal car rental. And so that ride-sharing technology might be able to be changed to different environments. House sharing, same thing. I paid someone to look after my house. Maybe with an Uber-style house-sharing app, someone might have actually paid to come and live in the house and look after the kitty cat. The threat is really obvious here with Uber. Okay, the number one threat is government regulation. Now, it is not like most taxi. So different regulation might sharply increase. Okay. So there's a strength, weakness, opportunity and threat. Verushka.
With government regulation, would it be worth it to actually look into legislation that's related to it?
If you could, I think it's probably going a little bit too far, but if it was I would say though for Uber, and probably not for many businesses, like this is almost the crucial issue. So what you might try and do is, for example, the Queensland government's just done a report into the taxi and ride-sharing industry. You might try and get hold of that to get a sense of what they do. I don't know if I'd go all the way to legislation. And Uber's hard because it's in 60-odd countries. So going through 60 countries worth of regulation, like that's not as much fun as watching the cricket for a night. So you're probably not going to spend your time. It wasn't good, was it? Yeah, it was terrible. They're going to lose. They're going to lose by a lot. They were record-breakingly bad. Tom, I didn't know you had that leaning. Okay, so now, if I can just go away from Australia getting 60 in their first innings and back to this, now we have to say what are the issues for Uber, okay, and what are some recommendations? And the number one thing here is government recommendations, is government regulation. I think that is the most important thing. And therefore, something you might do, remember your perspective, you're looking to buy this business. So what has Uber got to be able to do this? You have to show that they can work with regulators. And maybe you might try and recommend that they have to cover some of these gaps. They have to have a plan to have insurance that is trustworthy in place, because that's one of the big questions for regulators. Police checks are often another. So apparently in Queensland, taxi drivers have a police check every single day. It's an automatic thing that picks things up, but if someone was driving a taxi and there was an offence against their name, that would be very quickly picked up. And the tracking of cars is something that taxis do very, very carefully to provide more safety. So you might say, okay, if regulation is the issue, we have to have a high-quality, safe service. We have to cover all these gaps before we can make this investment into Uber, okay, and think about what that might mean. So there's a little example. Obviously, I expect you to have more than one in each, right? I think you'd want to have at least 3 in each and build from there. And you can see too that these are more than just dot points. Be prepared to put a sentence. If you've got some figures that can justify that, that would be great as well. Okay. Any questions or thoughts about that? Okay.
Wait, were you recording that?
I think so. I hope so.